WFM 91.7.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for staying with us right here on Women Radio WFM 91.7. How is your day going? How is the new week starting up for you? Today is Monday, and of course, you're welcome to The Big Question right here, where we get to discuss and prefer solutions to issues affecting us as a nation and as citizens. The Big Question comes to you Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 12:05 p.m. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rose Yusuf Kaiser. And today on The Big Question, we'll be looking at empowering women in STEM, closing the gender gap. All right, so STEM, we're talking about sciences, we're talking about technology, we're talking about engineering, and we're talking about mathematics. So when you look at it holistically, we're saying empowering women in sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, closing the gender gap. All right, so that's our topic for today: empower women in STEM, closing the gender gap today. And we are doing this, to commemorate the World Science Day for Peace and Development, which was on the 10th of November. All right, World Peace for Science. World Science Day for Peace and Development, 10 November 2023. All right, and the theme for this year is building trust in science. Now, the role in science in shaping our collective future can only be fulfilled when there is trust in science. And to have this trust in science, we have to actually empower women in sciences. We have to empower women in technology, engineering, mathematics. All these actually make up the sciences. All right, we need to close the gender gap so that at the end of the day, we can actually trust science to be holistic and, carrying everybody along. All right, so to do this with me today is Oreoluwa Lesi. She is the Executive Director, Women's Technology Empowerment Center. All right, and we're going to have this program together with her, discussing, of course, empower women in STEM, closing the gender gap, as part of the Women in STEM this afternoon. All right, so Oreoluwa, thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. I hope that the week is starting up very well for you.
Yes, very, very well indeed.
Okay. All right. It's good to have you. Now, let's get on with the discussion for today. To be a part of the program, you can dial 07000 917 917. Send a text or a WhatsApp message to 070 317 56537. All right, so let's get on to it, Oreoluwa. Let's look at, our topic for today and just start up with this particular question. Now, as a woman in tech, what does it mean to empower women in STEM? So we're talking sciences, we're talking technology, we're talking engineering, and we're talking mathematics. What does it mean to empower women in these various fields?
Okay, so it's very important for girls and women to understand the relevance of STEM subjects to them and to their lives. And they learn that partially through school, but also through other ways. This could be co-curricular activities. Ultimately, we want to have the participation of more girls and women in STEM fields, whether that's in terms of working, policy, research. And I think the way that we can start to do that is to get girls engaged when they're young. Girls and boys are equally as interested in sciences and technology. We've seen that from research. But then as they get older, there are different factors that cause a lot of girls to lose interest. So by making sure that girls continue to remain interested, curious, I think that's a very important way to make sure that girls are walking towards a possible future career in STEM. To do that, we want to make sure that the subjects are interesting to them, but also relevant, and that they see a place for themselves in it. So that's what it means to engage a girl in STEM. Get her interested, get her aware, get her to see what the relevance is to her day-to-day life and making a difference in the lives of others.
Okay. All right, thank you so much, Oreoluwa, for that. To be a part of the program, you can dial 07000 917 917. Send a text or a WhatsApp message 070 317 56537. All right, now let's look at how educational institutions encourage more young girls to pursue STEM subjects from an early age. Because if you talk about getting them interested, then it has to start from there. All right, so we're looking at primary, we're looking at secondary schools, pulling these girls in through making them by encouraging them and making them interested, making it interesting for them to be interested. So let's look at how educational institutions can encourage young girls to pursue STEM subjects from an early age.
Okay, so science, I like to think of science as a subject that explains the world. It can give explanations about different aspects of our lives, whether that's explaining rainbows, explaining why some people are tall, some people are short, explaining why the sun rises in the east and in the west. All these phenomena science explains. And children are naturally very curious. I think anyone who has been around children knows that they're always asking, but why? Why is this like this? Why is this like that? Why is this like this? And science is a subject that can provide answers to a lot of those questions. So I think that naturally, when children start to ask questions, sometimes, as adults or parents, we're like, we give them some simple answer just to, have them keep quiet so that we can go on with whatever we're doing. But if we're actually able to feed that curiosity by answering those questions, or the questions we're not able to answer, we say, okay, let's look it up. Let's go online and look it up. I think that's the attitude that schools also need to take on. Now, I know that schools have a set curriculum and they have exams the students are expected to pass. So it can be very different to have a very flexible way of teaching. But I think as much as possible, we also need to build in that time for curiosity, to foster their curiosity, for them to play, because children learn through playing, and girls are no exception. So we're doing experiments, we introduce experiments into the class, and it can be something very simple, going outside into the school compound and observing things in nature. It can be the teacher, answering the questions, and the questions that they cannot answer, saying, let's go and look it up. We can either go online or we go to the school library and let's look it up and let's try and find an answer. Those are the things that from an early age, they start to foster an interest. Or they will start to build on the natural interest that most children already have in the world around them. So I think that's one way that is very important. I think that as we move into secondary school as well, making sure that there's opportunities for hands-on activities, whether that's in chemistry, experiments, or looking at dissecting animals in biology or other experiments in physics. It is important to have that so that the students are able to start to translate the theory they are learning into practice.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Oreoluwa, for that. This is Women Radio WFM 91.7, Nigeria's first radio station for women and their families. And this is the program, The Big Question, where we get to discuss and propose solutions to issues affecting us as a nation. And today we are looking at empowering women in STEM, closing the gender gap. Okay. And we are doing this in commemoration of the World Science Day for Peace and Development, and which I think is just the perfect day to talk about women and girls in science. And that's why we're bringing up this topic today, talking about empowering women in STEM, closing the gender gap. All right, Oreoluwa, let's get on with the next question here. Now, we've looked at educational institutions, how to encourage young girls. Now, let's look at workplaces. All right, how can workplaces in STEM, fields, that's in science fields now, foster a more inclusive environment to retain and advance women in their careers? All right, so we have women who are working in a lot of scientific fields, who are into technology, women who are into engineering, and we have women who love mathematics and are doing something out of this. So how can workplaces foster a more inclusive environment to advance women in careers?
All right. So I think this one is a major problem because, number one, we're not getting enough girls deciding to pursue careers in STEM. So you're not having as many girls as you have boys going to higher education institutes to study these subjects. So already by the time you look at the workplace, there's already a deficit. If we look at the figures in Nigeria, and we look at the figures from JAM, about 22% of the graduates of engineering and technology are women. So the remaining 78 are men. So there's already a deficit going into the workplace. And then you look at the figures of women working in the technology workplace is about 20% made up of women. So you already are in a minority when you go into that space. And the thing is, when you don't see a lot of people who look like you may start to feel that maybe this space is not for me. So I am a recent engineering graduate and I started work and I'm very excited. But I go there and maybe I'm the only woman who's there. And then a few people may make a comment like, oh, okay, maybe they think that, I'm the secretary. Or if there's a meeting of peers, colleagues, and someone is asked to make the tea or get the snacks, it will usually be the woman. So there are already stereotypes about the capabilities and the competencies of women in a space where they're a minority. That means that women need to keep on working. They need to keep on proving themselves. They need to make sure that they are doing not as well as their male counterparts, but even better. And all that can be exhausting. And the data shows that within the first 10 years of working, a lot of women drop out of the workplace because there are just all these factors that just creates a hostile or unwelcome environment. So it is important that the organizations who want to have a more inclusive space, number one, look at recruiting more women. And when we say that, we don't mean that you are recruiting women who are not qualified or competent, because there are qualified and competent women out there, but you need to make that extra effort to make sure that you have a wider pool of female applicants. And so hopefully you get more women coming in so that the women who are coming into the workplace are already feeling a bit more welcome, that, okay, I'm not the only woman, I'm not representing all women here. Then care needs to be paid attention to the mode of the culture of the workplace, number one. If it's a workplace dominated by men, then you may tend to have jokes that may not be favorable or appreciated by women and make women feel uncomfortable. So the organization also needs to pay attention to the kind of culture and make sure that the culture is welcoming, that there's no sexual harassment going on under the guise of just being friendly, and they need to make sure that they take harassment and other kinds of discrimination very seriously. They need to have policies in place to make sure that it's not just talk, but it's followed up by action. And then, of course, COVID has helped us in that regard as well, in terms of flexible working from home. A lot of women in this part of the world, many parts of the world, are also homemakers. So that means they have responsibilities outside of the workplace. So if there's a project that requires one to be working many hours, they may not be able to stay in the office till like 11 p.m. to do it, but they can continue working from home, or maybe the next day they resume early. So organizations also need to make sure that they are building in flexible practices in their workplace. And I think, these are a few of the things that can help create a more inclusive environment. Okay. Also making sure that women are promoted as well for their achievements and not overlooked.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Oreoluwa, for that. I like the fact where you get to encourage, industries or organizations to be very intentional when it comes to employment. All right, so thank you very much for that. Now, let's look at the challenges, all right, that women commonly face in STEM careers. And what do you think can be done? What strategies can be implemented to overcome these challenges? Because I want to believe that life comes with its own challenges. So for women who are in STEM or who are into STEM careers, what are some of the challenges that are commonly faced? And how can these, challenges be overcome?
Okay, so I mentioned some already. One being a minority in the workplace, and that can be addressed by making sure that the organization pays more attention to be more inclusive and more rigorously look for female candidates to interview and ultimately to recruit. Another one is paying attention to the culture within the organization. There's some culture. Because they are mostly men, it's off-color jokes that we hear about, comments about women's bodies. That frankly make it a very uncomfortable place to work, no matter how thick-skinned you are. And so it is very important that care is paid attention to putting into place policies that make sure that the workplace is comfortable for all. I think ultimately it's very important to make sure that there are women in leadership position, and not to be a figurehead, but to make sure that number one, you are showing everyone that competent and qualified women can rise to the top in this organization and they can do well. And then women leaders are more likely to notice things that affect other women in the workplace. I'm sure we've all heard, or a lot of us have heard the story about Sheryl Sandberg, the former COO of Facebook, when she was pregnant, realizing that there was no parking space for pregnant women because I think maybe she was the first pregnant woman. Also, there was no female toilet. It was just a general toilet because most of the employees were men. So it can sometimes take a woman in leadership to notice and to advocate for changes in the workplace that can make space more favorable for women. That can also include recognizing the importance of flexible time. So you might be able to come in particular day because I have other responsibilities, but I'm still getting my work done, and I'm still assessed and evaluated based on the work that I do, not on being in the office and service. So I think those are some of the challenges. Those are some of the things that I do to address them.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that, Reolua. This is Women Radio WFM 91.7. The number to call is 07000 917 917. Send a text or a WhatsApp message to 070 317 56537. This is 23 minutes after 12. And of course, we are looking at empowering women in STEM, closing the gender gap. All right, so how do we empower women? How do we close this gender gap we have in STEM? Industries, organizations, and even in STEM careers or in STEM courses or subjects in schools. All right, so let's look at mentorship, Oreolua. In what ways can mentorship play a role in empowering women in STEM and narrowing the gender gap? Because what we're trying to do on this program is to see how we can close this gender gap, women in STEM. So let's look at the role of mentorship. What's the role of mentorship in this?
So mentorship is so important. They always say that you can't be what you can't see. Obviously, somebody has to be the pioneer. So someone has to set the way and, chart that path that's never been trod before. So you will have women who are the first in their field, the first female engineer, the first female professor of the physics department, the first, and they have had battles that they had to fight. So the idea of mentorship is that these women have gone through the path. They've seen and experienced and surmounted many of the challenges, and most likely are still contending with those challenges till date. And so they're able to share strategies with other women coming up behind them on, okay, these are the things that I faced. This is how I dealt with them. Mentorship is not necessarily telling someone what to do under different circumstances, but it's basically sharing your own experience, sharing how you navigated those challenges, and thereby providing like a template or a blueprint for others. So a woman coming up in an organization, or maybe she's a junior software developer, and she has developed a relationship with an older woman who has already gone through that path and is maybe the chief technology officer of the company. She can learn from her the kind of challenges that she went through. She can learn from her how she was able to address and overcome those challenges. And maybe the strategies that she's still using today to address the different challenges that she's going through, so that this young woman can take that experience of the older woman and look at her own life, look at her own set of challenges, look at her own context, and start to draw lessons from that and get ideas of how she can also address some of the challenges she's having. A mentor is someone who can be a sounding board for you as well. So assuming the younger lady she has some very specific questions, and she can ask and she can get ideas. In my organization, we have a mentorship program because we realized that it was very, very important for young women to have older women who they connected with. So we do is we run camps, technology camps, and we also run after-school clubs. Now, over the years, since we've started working, we've had women who have gone into university and polytechnics, and they're now studying STEM courses. And because we check in with them periodically, we were finding that lots of the young women within the university setting felt very isolated. They may have been doing well academically. Some of them may be struggling academically because, going from secondary school to university is such a big transition. And then for those who are going from girls-only secondary school to going to a university, which is kind of like the wider world, they are meeting all sorts of people who maybe are thinking, why are you in this department? Why are you studying engineering? Why are you in computer science? Shouldn't you be in, business administration or something else, or marketing, something else? So they had so many issues that they had to contend with. Some of them were thinking about dropping out or switching their degrees to something else where there'll be more women and they will feel more comfortable. And so that was at the points that we stepped in and now matched them with mentors. So women who are already working in the fields that they were studying to help provide a different perspective to them. And it really made a big difference because we saw the feedback from the young women, the mentees, and they said it made such a big difference that they were able to get strategies to address many of the problems. They now felt less isolated because they were connected to other women, and they thought, I may be the only woman in my department, but there are other women out there who I can connect with, who I can learn from, who I can gain support from. So mentorship is really, really important, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that, for stressing the need for mentorship, because you go around and see what is happening. You would definitely appreciate having that, somebody to guide you through these courses or guide you through these careers when you decide to do one as a woman. All right. Thank you very much, Oreoluwa, for that. Okay. So just in a bit to wrap this up now, what role do you think the government policies play in promoting gender equality in STEM fields? Do you think that we have government attention in trying to close this gap? Is government doing enough? Do we have initiatives? Do we have programs on ground that are promoting gender equality in STEM fields? And then you give us your last words with that.
Okay. All right. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
So I think the government has a big role to play. We don't expect the government to do everything and the government to personally develop and run initiatives to help close the gender gap. But we do expect the government to create the right policies that will encourage girls and women to thrive. So number one, policies that make sure that there's education available for all and there's quality education. Policies that are focused on making sure that the STEM curriculum in schools is strong, is rigorous, and is continually updated, because this is an area that we tend to be left behind very, very quickly. Policies that make sure that there is fair and equitable and inclusive recruitment in the workplace, and also policies that make sure that women are able to thrive in the workplace, and also laws that make sure that any of sexual harassment or discrimination is also properly penalized. It's important to make sure that initiatives that are supporting more inclusive workspaces and the wider STEM ecosystem as well also gain some kind of support as well. I think that's very, very important.
Okay.
Yes, and then making sure that there's access, because that's also another issue. Having access to the infrastructure that you can use to support STEM learning, whether that is like labs, hubs, and then also widely available broadband internet, because there's so much learning that people can do on their own and with others online. So really, the government has a role to play in terms of setting that pace, setting those directions, prioritizing an inclusive STEM workplace and ecosystem at large, which of course will start from the education system. So making sure that the government invests quite heavily in education, because that's the basis of anything. If you have a well-educated citizenry, they can even go on and multiply that and do so much on their own. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Well, let's see. Do you have maybe you just drop one or two advice for young girls who are thinking of, especially maybe those who are done with their secondary school or maybe about to get into the senior secondary school and are wondering, should I go into sciences? Do I think I can do this? And all of that. So let's hear your word of advice for young girls in this category, or those who want to pursue a career, in sciences, technology, or engineering, mathematics. Let's hear you.
Okay, so I would say sciences are for everybody, technology is for everybody, engineering is for everybody. These are disciplines that are solving problems of the society, and problems are, experienced by everyone. So we need to have the perspectives, we need to have the competencies of everyone, men, women, young people, older people, people of different cultures, religious and ethnic backgrounds. We need to have everyone. I would say do your research, because STEM is wide. Even within sciences, even within technology, even within engineering, there are lots of different disciplines. So it's good to understand, so you can start to see where you might fit in. Do your research. There's a lot of information online. I would say you can also connect with groups. Feel free to connect with my group if the information is shared later online on our social media. But if you are in university, there are different groups as well. If you are a computer science student, whatever you might be, there are different groups out there. So I would say go online, look for information, and then from the information, try to connect with people who are working in this space so you can get a realistic idea of what it's like. And then through that, you can start to identify the spaces that you might fill in, and then keep learning. With any STEM discipline, you have to keep learning. Learning is non-negotiable, and there are resources online to enable you to do that. So go out there, do the research, connect with people, speak with them, and then just start to learn. If you identify an area that you think you might be interested in, learn as much as you can about it. And I would say, from there, you just start to find, take one step in front of another step. But I would say go for it.
Okay, go for it. All right. Thank you so much, Orelua, for being a part of the program this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Do have a great day and enjoy the rest of the week.
All right, you too. Thank you.
All right, so that's Oreoluwa Alesi. She is the Executive Director of Women's Technology Empowerment Center, and she has spoken to us today about empowering women in STEM, that is sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we're looking at closing the gender gap for women in STEM. All right, so I'm hoping that as organizations, as private individuals, as parents also, you have heard this and you keep encouraging your young girls, you keep encouraging the girls you have, even the women around you, to go ahead and pursue careers and go into the field of STEM without being scared or without, any form of withdrawal or going back, in terms of this. So thank you all so much for being a part of the program today. Join us again on Wednesday at 12:05 for the big question. My name is Rose Yusuf K. So do also have a great day and stay with us right here on Women Radio WFM 91.7. Good afternoon.
WFM 91.7.